Hello there, my name is Mihai and I've been working in project management for over 15 years, and this is the next video in our set about learning on project management. In this video, I want to be explaining the 5 project management phases, what they mean, and what you need to do for each of them. So let's get started. First one we want to talk about is initiating. This is the first one. Now, what do we need to do in initiating? Well, we need to define what's the purpose of the project. What are we trying to achieve? What do we want to do? What is my objective? That's the first thing. Without that, how do I know what I'm supposed to be delivering? Next, in order to see if I can actually achieve what I want to achieve, I usually do a feasibility study. How good is this idea? How well can I implement it? What kind of risks am I seeing? Will something manifest, some threat that will make me fail my project, or maybe some opportunity that will help me deliver it? In initiating, we also want to identify our stakeholders. Stakeholder is anybody who has an interest in our project. They could be the sponsor, they could be a homeowners association, they could be an NGO, they could be an environmental group. It depends on what the project is. When we identify the stakeholder, then we create the project charter. So if I know my purpose, if I know my risks, if I have my feasibility study, if I know who's interested in the project, then I can create the project charter. The project charter basically says what I'm trying to achieve, who is the sponsor and is paying for it, and it also gives you authority as the project manager in order to lead it. So initiating basically answers the following questions. Who is this for? What problem am I trying to solve? And what time and budget I have available in order to achieve it. Next, we have planning. In planning, I'm supposed to create all of the plans that we need to track. So basically, you create the skeleton of the project and you create plans, non-stop plans. Everything has a plan. I need to create the project plan. I need to create the scope plan. How am I going to manage my scope? I need to create the schedule plan with milestones and deadlines. How am I going to plan and track my time? I need to estimate the costs and the resources that I'm going to use in order to deliver my objectives. Also, I need to plan for risks. How am I going to mitigate them? How am I going to identify them? How am I going to track them? How am I going to quantify them? All of these things are part of planning. We also need to create communication plans. Who am I communicating with? What am I communicating them? How often do I communicate with them? What do they want to know? What is their interest? I identify the stakeholders, then I need to know what they're interested in. For example, an environmental NGO can be interested if I'm respecting certain laws and regulations. So how do I communicate with all of these people so that I can keep them satisfied and I can keep them interested and supportive for my project? I also need to see how am I going to define the success? How do I know that what I did is actually successful? What are my key performance indicators? How do I know that I'm achieving the targets that I should be achieving? And in this image, I want to explain a bit what happens. In the beginning, we have very high risk and uncertainty because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know everything. Things can manifest, risks can take place. So we have a lot of uncertainty in the beginning, but that's fine because the better we plan and the more time we spend in planning, the cost of changes are very low. It's very difficult to make changes the more a project progresses. Imagine it like this. I'm trying to build a house and it's supposed to have 3 floors. Well, now somebody comes over and tells me, you need to do actually 2 floors or 5 floors. So I either have to take floors out or add others in. This will add more cost if I've actually started building the actual building. Maybe the foundation isn't good enough so that I can add 2 more floors. Maybe it will cost me a lot to actually demolish 1 floor because I haven't respected some rules and regulations on how high I can build. So it's perfectly fine that we don't know everything in the beginning, but you need to be comfortable with this, and you need to understand that the better I identify things in the beginning, the easier it is for me to actually make changes. Change management becomes more expensive as the project progresses. As I'm introducing and using more people and resources, the harder it is for me to make changes, the more complicated those changes become. Now that I've created all of the plans, I want to focus on execution, where I'm actually delivering the project work. What am I supposed to do here? This is where we actually start doing the work. This is where the project manager, which is you maybe, who has authority given through the project charter, starts assigning responsibilities and tasks to his team members in order to deliver all of the tasks that we identified in planning. So we start producing the deliverables. Actual work is getting done. Now, this next photo will actually show you how work evolves as the project timeline progresses. So again, like the previous image with the cost of change, this actually shows me how many resources I need to start allocating based on each project phase. So in the beginning, in initiating, we have a very low amount of resources. We have a few stakeholders, a few subject matter experts, the project manager, the sponsor, few people involved. Then we start planning. As we start planning, we start using more experts. We start engaging more people. We start using more resources. When we actually start doing the work, that's when the actual volume increases a lot, because that's where we're actually doing the deliverables. That's where we're actually doing the work. And as we close off the project, I'm releasing resources, I'm closing contracts, I'm releasing people from their work contracts. So again, it takes a nosedive, and the amount of work that I need to do decreases dramatically. Next, since we've talked about executing, where we actually do the work, monitoring and controlling happens in parallel. It happens exactly at the same time. So this is in parallel with execution, and its point is to manage scope. We need to make sure that we're actually delivering what we're supposed to be delivering and nothing else. We're supposed to be avoiding scope creep and gold plating. Scope creep is when we add additional scope that was not identified in initiating in the project charter, and gold plating is when we try to add nice to have features because we think the impact will be nice to have. Well, guess what? You're not supposed to be doing things you're not supposed to be doing. You want to add improvements, you want to add enhancements, treat them as such as part of a separate project. Because the more deliverables I add, the more complexity I add, the more dependencies I add, and the higher my chance of risks manifesting is. So it's as easy as that. We want to adjust the schedule and the resources. We want to make sure that we're on time and in budget. How do we do this? Well, if we created a plan in order to track our schedule and our budget, then we need to see where we are against it. We need to make decisions. Do we add more resources in order to finish a task earlier? Do we remove resources from a specific task which is non-critical to a task which is critical, which is on the critical path and can impact my end date? So this is what we need to do in monitor and control. We also need to make sure that we're talking with the stakeholders, because everything that we do is communicate. We need to communicate with the people that we've identified that have an interest in our project, where we actually are. How are we progressing? This makes part of the communication plan. This makes part of the stakeholder plan and engagement. How do we communicate with them? What do we tell them? How do we make sure that we have them invested in our project so they're supportive of what we're trying to achieve? We're also controlling quality to make sure that we're delivering at the highest quality possible so that we don't need to do rework, which will actually increase the cost and time of my project. After we've done all of this, let's say that everything is fine, everything went perfect. Now we're moving on to closing. Well, in closing, what do? We confirm that all of the deliverables are completed and approved. We conduct a retrospective or lessons learned in order to see what we did well, how we can do better, and what we did wrong, and how we can avoid that in the future. It's very important to have lessons learned because otherwise you have no idea if you actually did the right thing. So you should do it. What do we do next? We release the resources. We release the teams, the vendors. We close off licenses. We close off hardware. We give back equipment that we maybe rented in order to build something. So we need to close the contracts. We need to document everything and close everything out. Because if you remember the curve that I showed you earlier, in closing, we start giving resources away because we don't need them anymore. They fulfilled their purpose. And what's next? We celebrate, because why not? You've delivered a good project and you deserve it. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, drop a comment below and subscribe for more. Thanks, and see you in the next one.